Hey, what's going on YouTube? Kenny here. And today I want to talk to you about Alibaba. So Alibaba did have a bit of a drawdown, about 13.3% on December the 24th. So just yesterday on Christmas Eve. So probably wondering where the Alibaba coverage is. Basically, I want to really take my time and try to dig into this one. This is a very complicated problem. And I think we really need to zoom out macro-wise and not simplify this. And I know a lot of folks are just like, going into their buy the dip kind of formulaic approach, which I think works a lot of the time, okay? And then, especially if you have the right time horizon, that's totally fine. And if you're a long-term investor, you still should kind of take a look at some of these kind of trends because, again, there's really sensible reasons to hold on when you really just don't need the money. But at the same time, if you're watching a video like this and are concerned, then that's probably reason to believe that there might be something else coming. I've definitely changed my thesis a lot. I don't think that this is quite the bottom yet anymore. I think that there might be more downside. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak to you about 4 points that I've kind of come up with and kind of my overall thoughts and research. And then I'm going to take you through kind of the news cycle as well. So I think there's a bunch of news that maybe people might have overlooked during their due diligence cycle, just because it's really easy to throw things kind of off, shrug them off your shoulder once profitability is going up and kind of the institutions are still involved. So that's one piece. But again, I'm going to take a very macro focused look at this. So I'm talking history. I'm talking about where they are in the space, kind of looking at the risk levels and what makes sense for price based on those risk levels. So I'm going to take this one really slow and deliberate. I'm going to apologize if this one gets kind of complicated or a little bit convoluted, but it kind of is necessary because, again, if you've watched my channel by any amount of time, you know that I don't like to abstract very complicated things and just say, hey, easy mode, buy the dip. I think that's delinquent, and I think that's lazy. And again, so going through this, just know that, and let's get something to drink because this one's going to take a while, or just pause it or whatever like that. And if you don't want to watch it, then don't ruin your Christmas. Again, I've changed my thesis, so this is just what I think. So first thing, I want to take a look at the macro level. So if you think about Hong Kong, right, and the principles thereby governing it. So in 1997, everybody knows that basically the UK gave up its territory back to China, and the Communist Party did indeed roll in the tanks, right? But the thing that they did that I think everybody had a lot of kind of positive sentiment about was the fact that economically it still remained detached. They knew, or they were still capitulating to the fact that the economics was still kind of separate, it's kind of more important. They were in their growth cycle, if you will, right? 1997 to about 2020. Now it's been 23 years. So now I know a lot of older investors right now are still thinking in that mindset, that growth mindset. But remember, China has signaled to us that it wants to deleverage, okay? If you don't know what the long-term debt to credit cycle is, then really look it up. But really, China is deleveraging their economy, which means now is not the time for growth. So with that, I think you've seen the inflection point where last year, or this year rather, where the Hong Kong protests got a little bit more outrageous. The Iron Hand has kind of got a little bit stronger. And just a couple things to think about. And if you're saying, oh, well, Kenny, you're not Chinese and you don't know all this other stuff. Yeah, that's exactly it. But here's the point of this, right? And I'm going to really be really clear about this. You see, there's a bunch of either Chinese, Taiwanese, Singaporean folks who go to China, right? Or speak Mandarin or Cantonese, have some inkling of how Alibaba works. And in that space, they're very quiet right now. There's a reason for that. I'm not just saying it's the CCP, but think about it. If you still want to have relatives there, if you have friends there, if you still want to visit there, you just can't. It's not America. You can say whatever you want. There are restrictions, but I'm going to go into that too because I think Jack Ma is getting caught up in a lot of this, and I just want to talk about it. So just think about it, right? You're like, oh, well, this ex-YouTuber who's Chinese would have said something about it, right? Not necessarily. They have a vested interest too. So me being a true-blooded America, I have a little different take on this. So that too, I just want to say that my biases are reflective of that. Okay, and so then you say, okay, well, Kenny, generally smarter people have already vetted this. It got into the NASDAQ and all that other stuff. That's not always true because look at Lunkin Coffee, right? But even if you say that, okay, that's an anomaly, whatever, it doesn't matter, then you still got to ask yourself, okay, right, they put them into the NASDAQ and all this other stuff, too big to fail. I agree. It's a huge company. It's not going to go bankrupt, and I'm going to go through it, but I'm just trying to set this up so you can kind of think about it from both sides. So you're not just so focused on like, I love Alibaba. The stock goes up, stocks only go up. I think that's, again, a very lazy way to think of it. But you have to follow the money. And then what is the money saying? The money is absolutely saying it's going down, right? So you see this huge correction. And, here people are like, well, oh, great dip, I'll just buy it. Oh, great, more dip, I'll just buy it. Great dip, there's more. And then people finally realize, like, hey, this might be a serious problem. So now we're down to like what, 214, right? 222 right now. I'm sorry, didn't mean to scare you. But with that, I mean, honestly, I see it. I mean, the next logical place for it to go is 170. There's not a lot of support here. This is it. This is like the true test. I think around 210, 213, as you see here on the kind of screen. But I mean, if it doesn't hold next week, I think we hit 170. And honestly, I mean, I don't want to go into this right now. I want you to think for yourself and make your own decisions. If you're an Alibaba holder, you're an investor, you're a trader, so much different from the way I'm playing and the way I'm looking at it, because your goals are different from my goals. So as a matter of fact, let me just go ahead and put this disclaimer up here. I'm not a financial advisor. Okay, so with that, if you're doing what kind of I do, is I mostly swing trade. And I think the most edge can be found in like 3 days to a month swing trades. And then leap calls are my 3 go-to. So with that in mind, I think that if we get a little bit of a pop here, or people try to flood back in, some retail money floods back in, because I don't think any institutional money is coming in right now to Alibaba. But if we do get a little bit of a pop, I think we can still see something like this. And it does like to consolidate a little bit, so I might even do something like this, right? But I think we see 170 again. If we don't, I'm very happy for the folks who are invested in it and all that. I'm not knocking the company. The company's massive. It's huge. I wish it all the success in the world. It's not personal. It's trading. But I'm telling you that I see 170 based on just a lot of things. So, all right, Kenny, get into the research. Again, take a seat. This one's gonna be long. We're already at 8 minutes, and I haven't even gotten to the news. So you can see that this is going to be a deep dive. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about. So with the Alibaba investigation, China gets tougher on tech. So I'm going to read actually a lot of this because it's kind of important. So China internet giants came to dominate segments of the world's number 2 economy because Beijing's authoritarian government largely looked the other way while they grew. And again, this is what I was talking about with the Hong Kong and all that other stuff, right? The stepped-up scrutiny of Alibaba and Ant, the pillars of the business empire of Jack Ma, China's most famous tycoon, coincides with efforts with the United States and EU to curb the Western internet powerhouses. I think this is, again, a macro level kind of problem. I think not only is China dealing with this, but obviously the US is dealing with too, and EU. There's fines going all over the place, and deservedly so, probably by a bunch of people. I mean, especially if you follow Scott Galloway, right? So, but the point here is, this is a problem. Governments are trying to figure out how to deal with it, and the CCP is uniquely in the space to deal with it any way it wants. It truly does wield like ultimate power, and once you become persona non grata or PNG, like I'm going to try to explain to you, Jack Ma is, things change. Okay, so there's going to be a certain reluctance to harm these very successful companies, which have huge ecosystems that are responsible for thousands of employees, he said. they're going to have to do a lot of pulling of teeth, pulling of hair, trying to figure out, okay, we got to do something, but what's it going to be? And so this is the problem I think you have with the American Congress. The same thing. They want to break up Facebook. They don't know if it's good, but they know, well, they just don't know what to do. And the smartest people in the room are either generally quiet or not able to get their voices heard, probably. There's a lot of lobbying. But in China, lobbying can only go so far. So Beijing's pushback against big tech erupted out into open last month when officials halted Ant's long-awaited initial public offering just days before its shares had been expected to begin trading. Again, we already covered this on the last episode, but essentially, like, yeah, we'll just watch the previous episode. It's kind of a long one. Okay, Ant's Alipay app has become an indispensable payment tool to hundreds of millions of people in China, but regulators have been wary of the company's growing influence in small loans and credit products, etc. The IPO would have been the largest in history. And so one thing that I wanted to come over here, this is like a Quora article, but I remember reading this and it was kind of interesting. Again, I just look at every resource I can. So some of this might be incorrect, anecdotal. This guy could be nobody, but, you know, it does bring up the point that, you know, Jack Ma famously said that he would be happy to donate the entire Alipay business to the Chinese government if it was needed for the good of the country. Well, people in China understood and praised this as Jack's patriotic statement. Now think about this. How would this fly in America? It was highly controversial in the eyes of many overseas media outlets. They took this as a sign of the Chinese government attempting to nationalize successful private businesses. They thought that Jack said it under duress. And it was part of a big conspiracy with communists. Even though billionaires would lose their wealth instantly, no protection of private property, Chinese government cannot be trusted, that kind of thing. But I digress. I think the truth probably lies somewhere half and half. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, and I generally understand how hard it is to like develop conspiracies at the government or high levels because secrets are fucking impossible to keep, right? But in general, just remember that there's a lot of power here, and so they're not readily going to relinquish that. So going on, so cutthroat practices of sort have long been common in the Chinese internet, and it's the equivalent of Facebook blocking links to Amazon within its Messenger app. So think about that, right? And so I don't have that kind of experience, or I don't really work with the Alibaba platform in the way that most people are interacting with it in China. So I did have, I found somebody on the internet, this guy right here, Mr. Felix from Felix Finance, and you know he's got some Chinese homies. So let's just hear him explain it. It's gonna be better than me explaining it to you.
Now, on top of this, what is this monopoly investigation really about? It seems to focus on something that's common in online retail in China. It's not just Alibaba, JD does it, some of the other big retailers do it. If you want to be on their website, you have to pick just them. You can't list the same company's retail business with Tmall, say, and JD. They don't allow you to do that. You have to pick one. And that this government investigation is implying is anti-competitive, because if you're with me, with Alibaba, you can't work with any of my competitors. So it makes the switch to another platform very, very difficult, because it's a hugely risky move. You lose all of your customers, you lose all of your history on that e-retail channel. And I'll do some other videos to actually really show you these channels, because it's quite interesting to see what they look like.
Okay. Again, I just wanted to kind of showcase that I'm not always the best person, and I know that. So I just want to see other people are thinking about it, other people are focusing on it. Okay, so it finishes. The political insiders and investors in China have speculated for years that the national leader Xi Jinping might be tempted to move against Mr. Ma, worried about his influence was it growing in front of the Communist Party. Two recent party members meeting meetings hinted that Mr. Xi was considering action. And then I have highlighted in red here Mr. Ma's remarks railing against the financial regulation, and this is at a conference, right? Delivered in a conference in October in Shanghai, appeared to have helped galvanize the officials into putting Ant and Alibaba in their place. In Chinese culture, if you're a rich guy and you have very strong economic power and social influence, then you are politically dangerous, and you have to keep a very low profile to be safe, said Gary Liu, an independent economist in Shanghai. So that's the end of the kind of New York Times article, but I'm going to kind of bring this all together. So in 2017, I think this was like the first flagging, and I think we kind of overlooked that. Well, no, we didn't, but I mean, stocks were going up, and China hadn't hit deleveraging yet, and the pandemic hadn't happened. So this is just an article just showing that behind the scenes, the movement against Ma in 2017. So Ma was detained in 2015. Just think about that, right? In 2015, he was detained, okay? And Xi's ongoing crackdown on Gaft, Xi and Wang have been known each other since their youth and worked closely together in an anti-corruption campaign, but Gao's, I don't know if that's pronounced right, Gao, revelation, which some play down as being aimed at avoiding his extradition, has given rise to speculation that a rivalry may be emergent between the two. It continues, power struggles are common in China in the run-up to a national congress, but basically this is all about Xi's move against kind of Jack Ma, right? Here on the bottom, and this is in 2017, recall that, okay? So, but Xi had already accumulated substantial power to the extent that he has now been designated Hexian, translated as court and meaning a special leader status. Sorry if I pronounced all that wrong. Okay. So again, that's just that first move. And then here is just another point. The point is we kind of knew this. So in 2018 here in January, the article comes out, the 55-year-old announced in September 2018 that he would step down as executive chairman in 12 months' time, bringing an end to his 20 years at the helm. But the company, this is him, this is his excuse and his like very apolitical stance. The company should depend on a system of leadership, its culture, and its people in the system that keeps the company alive for 102 years. It's not only one person. And while I agree with that, if you were betting on Tesla right now, for all you Tesla bulls and fans, you know what I'm talking about. If Elon Musk stepped away, how sure are you that the company runs as a hyper growth company as it is? It's just a question to think about. I'm not saying one way or the other because everybody has their own opinions, and I don't want to tread on your opinions because I definitely want to hear them. In fact, put it in the comments. All right. So, is it all bad news? Well, this might be some interesting good news. So, according to this, there's a steady erosion from basically the independence of the South China Morning Post, which used to be the most influential kind of English language daily journal, whatever, daily. But anyways, this article is basically suggesting, I'll just read this actually. The article seemingly raised questions without saying it directly about how the relatives and officials close to Xi himself could have gotten so rich, given that Xi, after coming to power in 2012, launched the biggest corruption crackdowns in China's modern history. So far, it has taken down at least 120 high-ranking officials, dozens of PLA officers, 5 national leaders, and 100,000 rank-and-file party officials who have been indicted for corruption. I think the essence of this article is just suggesting that there's some surreptitious, you know the word I'm looking for, surreptitious ties to corporations that may be not front-facing, so there might be some duplicity. Basically, Xi might be having this say-do gap. I don't know anything about this. I'm not that deep into the politics, but this is a very initial cursory view, and the reason I do this is to ask more questions. And again, this is me telling you that if you look at, I clicked on like this guy, Ricky Gutierrez's thing, like, hey, just buy dips. Like, what's he basing that on? Like, I am not saying he's bad or anything like that. He's clearly a great trader and he's got great fans, and I think he's fine. He's good. But when it comes to something like this, you probably should do some research. And I know he's super busy, so it's not a ton of his wealth. It's probably one like quarter of a quarter of a quarter position of his size. So he doesn't care, and that's fine. But he does have a voice, and there's other people listening. Um, this is not a criticism of him. I think he's fine. I think he's great. So don't the Ricky Army don't go down there. But I'm just suggesting that we should be definitely looking into some of this stuff. And again, this is cursory surface level stuff. I don't imagine that there's some real smart people right now that are like, hey, hedge funds, you should probably sell. Here's $100,000 article on why you should sell. Pay me 100,000 and you can have this article. But anyways, I digress. One final thing I want to leave you with, though. So this is, if you don't know, like there's a Voice of America is basically, I want to be careful here. Voice of America is American radio abroad that kind of promotes American kind of values across State Department lines. I think it is an official State Department kind of. I don't want to say. Okay, I don't want to say anything more. But just listen to this.
One thing I want to say is the importance of Voice of America to me. I started listening to Voice of America when I was 15. And in 1977, when I was in a Chinese jail, my interrogator, among the first interrogation sessions, they asked me, did you listen to enemy radio? I said, yeah, Voice of America.
Did you listen to enemy radio? Just think about that.
In that time, it was a jailable offense. I spent my 21st birthday in jail, and partly because I listened to Voice of America.
Okay. I bring that up only because there was an interesting kind of video kind of correlated with this, but I really just wanted to drive home the point that if you are being very lazy about your research right now or very lazy about the way in which you are trading these markets, then this is the time that smarter folks will take away your money. I've been saying this since the beginning. This is a gladiatorial arena. There's arbitrage going on. There's blood in the streets. People who are smarter than you, if you're not using every edge you have, and your edge, if you're a retail investor, is to be very fucking nimble, right? You can get in, you can get out, all right? So that's why I've developed my strategies. I'm not selling you anything. I don't care. You can see I don't have any links. I never tell anybody to subscribe or anything like that. It's the first time you probably even heard me say that, out of context, of course. But my point is, like, really dig in and figure out what your edge is. Use your own brain. You're smarter than you think you are. I'm just an idiot and a talking head, but I hope this helps you inform your process. Now, I'm not saying Alibaba is going one way or the other. It could spin around and go back up tomorrow, but I really think it's under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of catalysts that are going to happen. And while in America we have this ridiculous Congress that's butting heads and so slow to act and can't do anything against monopolies, the CCP is a completely different story. I think it can and I think it will take action. So that is my 2 cents, and I'm sorry that this came out on Christmas, but I do want to have this out before the market opens on Monday. So what am I doing? I used to always say it, but I don't know that I really want to say what I'm going to be doing here because I just don't think it's necessary or useful at this point. But I don't have a position in Alibaba. I did sell when it was having a hard time recovering. I didn't think that it was the bottom, and I definitely have confirmed kind of my suspicions at this point. So I'm going to hold, and I'm going to wait for 170. I'm not even going to hold. I'm going to be pretty aggressive, but that's neither here nor there. You use your own brain. Think of your own strategy. And hey, thanks for watching, and Merry Christmas, y'all. I got almost 200 subscribers now, and it's just awesome. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you.